All right. So, welcome back to another episode of Thinking Outside the Bank. Today, we have a very special guest in Kim Ramirez. Kim is a real estate agent with the Buckley Group, has been practicing just over a year and a half. Welcome to the podcast today, Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
absolutely. Absolutely. We're excited to kind of dive into a little bit of your background and obviously kind of the theme of thinking outside the bank again for those of you that have not seen this before is yes, we're talking about creative real estate, but also decisions that have had to be creative in life when life has thrown you a curveball to really have to think outside the box as well. So today, Kim, I want to kind of start off sharing a little bit of your background and kind of how we met, of course, and then we'll get into some questions.
Absolutely.
So as I mentioned, Kim is a real estate agent with the Buckley Group that practices here in Central Florida. Kim and I actually met through the power of social media, through Facebook. Um, Kim, tell me a little bit about what you remember from the first time we got to meet and how that interaction
Well, yeah. So I actually had reached out to you. I know you had mentioned looking for, certain properties, flips or fixer-uppers potentially. And actually, when I first started real estate, going in blindly, not knowing what I was doing, but being completely transparent, I saw someone else had made a post similar, and I messaged them saying, I have no idea what any of this math is or what this means. However, if you explain it, I will be glad to help you, and I guarantee I can. So, we sat on FaceTime for hours. He kind of showed me the ropes of what it is to actually find fixer-upper homes, know the values, the numbers, and I love numbers. I love, just running math, just knowing we're right on the dime. So when you made your post similar, I had reached out and, try to see exactly where you're looking so I could get on the MLS or even off market, found a lot of off market groups to join just to find you that perfect property.
I
And
love
then
that.
it led to us meeting up, talking kind of
Yeah.
business strategy later on.
Yeah. And I remember, I remember the post I had made. I had gone into a local Palm Coast Facebook group and just made a post about, yeah, looking for a fixer upper. I got a lot of comments back, some homeowners, lots of real estate agents. And however, and as I mentioned, Kim's a real estate agent. Kim was the only one that reached out. And even though I said, I don't really necessarily need someone to represent me to go find a home because I was getting sent new builds, I was getting sent, you know, Sally's house that was getting ready to sell. Kim was the only real estate agent that gave me a creative solution to my problem. She listened to what I was looking for, and she didn't just give me the tool, the one tool that most real estate agents have, right? To list and sell retail properties. But Kim saw something different that really, again, drew her to that and drew me back to her. Because it was a few months after we first connected that we actually connected in person. She connected with my partner, who's also in Palm Coast, and we sat down and had coffee together and kind of remembered how we originally met. And she had been out there looking for that property. And that's kind of what I want to talk about first. Obviously, Kim is tell me a little bit about that property. We actually did a novation together. Kim brought
Mhm.
it to us and then was able to list it and successfully sell it for us in under 30 days, I will add. So tell me a little bit about that property and kind of what drew you to it and what made you think, hey, I'm gonna take it back to Trevor and Robert, and I think they're the right guys for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we had met in the coffee shop, once again, being transparent, I asked y'all how we do creative financing. What are some, strategies? What do we do for it? I had no intentions of really advertising or pushing that specific property. I sent a few others. Nothing really made sense. We saw a horrific one in Ormond. And whenever I had then met with my seller, I had the property on the market for a couple months. We had a lot of showings, but just no interest. She decided to remodel it. Well, she got down the rabbit hole of just finding random people throughout, social media, or Googling or whatever. And she spent a lot of money and the project got nowhere. It was still pretty gutted, the house, for the amount of money she had spent putting into it. I had spoke to her, asking exactly what she wants out of it. If we sell it as is, this is the amount she'd get. Or we can actually have someone come in, help fix the projects, finish them, finalize them, and you can still get what you want, and the house would be more attractive to sell and could get different loan options. If we had sold it where it was, it would have had to been cash, hard money, some kind of different, creative financing in a sense. But whenever you guys came in and were able to make it this beautiful home, we were able to sell it with a VA loan. And that's huge because VA is the most strict loan there is. So it really made a difference. You guys got to do what you do, flip homes and whatnot, get what you got out of it, and still help and make the seller very happy. The buyers were happy. It was smooth. We got 3 contracts in 9 days.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Um, and so this scenario, you had a seller who inherited the home, tried to
Mm-hmm.
list it on the open market, couldn't sell it. You, as the agent, I give you a lot of credit in this, and I want to highlight you as well a lot in this. You've only been in real estate a year and a half, not actually a little bit
Yeah.
longer than myself. I was healthcare representative before this and did physical therapy for a number of years. So I'm still learning. But I love that a couple of times you've referenced you were open and honest of what you didn't know with those around you, and you learned as you went. You were honest about the things you didn't know, but you were confident that, hey, if you help me with this, I'll get it done. And I think that's the thing that drew Robert and I to you most was, hey, she's willing and open and to learn. And a lot of people who adapt to creative finance, and it's not for everybody. Everybody, again, we get
Mm-mm.
it's a scam daily, but a lot of people who really get it don't get it right off the bat. Say, hey, this is something I'm willing to learn, something I'm open minded to. As long as it's legal, I'm open to hearing what's going on. And Kim did just that. We went through a real estate attorney. We had somebody draw up a novation agreement, and we made a cash offer, which was under what our novation agreement was. I'm sure Kim remembers the numbers pretty well. What did you guys have it listed as previously that it wasn't getting any traction on the market?
We had it listed for 320, and there were, people coming in and out, but there's no offers. And she was almost willing to go, 299 route just to kind of get it sold, knowing it needed all these, items to fix. A great thing, focus on the big ticket items, got that taken care of. So that's also a big chunk of money. Wanted to implement things to her taste particularly,
Of
and I
course.
kept just trying to teach her and coach her in sense of like what the market is, what people are looking for. They're not looking for, carpet or, just random
Yeah.
colors, very neutral. So it was very outdated. And that was our biggest factor. And that's why people, weren't interested in going in there and seeing the projects that they'd have to do. Even if it's a simple paint, people don't want to do that. So whenever we got it fixed, we were able to list it way higher than that
Yeah.
and still got way more attention right off the beginning, off rip.
Yep. Yep. So we
Mhm.
we as investors came in and saw the potential of this because she had done a lot of work. She had an all new AC. She had done some painting. She had done some remodeling. She had redone the kitchen. The kitchen looked beautiful. Had a beautiful 2-car garage sitting on a huge corner lot, but it still needed flooring. It still needed a master bath renovation, which Robert, my partner, and I both knew it's going to take some money to get up to the point. We knew that it could sell for 320 or we saw 340 or 350, which is ultimately what it ended up selling for. But after we put in more money to the renovation, and this homeowner had already put in, what do we say, over 100,000 in renovations because it was dated and
Mhm.
she had done a good job. But again, that's where coming in and having people that have contractors and have connections and have people that can do it at speed because those holding costs can really get you. So when we go into a flip, we not only look at what are we buying it for, what could we sell it for, and what's the rehab. That's not the only money that goes into that. As you know, and as you've walked through this process with us, if we would have had to come in and buy it cash or on a hard money loan, which a lot of people don't use their own cash, they use a hard money lender. The idea is to get the project done relatively quickly. Because if you wait around and do it for a year, that's 12 months worth of interest payments. If you get it done in 2 months, like we did, we only paid 2 months worth of interest plus the month that we were listing. We paid 3 months total in hard money if we had gotten a hard money loan on this. But we realized we could get the seller more money. We actually got her 245 out the door, where our cash offer would have been something like 220 because we knew there was holding costs in there. We'd have to go get a down payment for a hard money loan. We'd have to pay the interest. So there was a lot of sunk costs. And in our mind, okay, there's relatively low rehab. I think we put about 30 to $33,000, $35,000 if my math is correct, to get this house list ready. When the house was list ready, Kim and her team came in, did amazing photos, videos, and was able to sell it at that top of the market price at 350. The seller made more money. We paid less in hard money loans and interest. We didn't have to go out and do that. We were able to close quicker. We did have some attorney fees that we had to pay up front, but otherwise, at the end of the day, we were able to make more profit, and so was the seller. The agent still gets their commission. She's able to sell it. Everybody in that situation wins. So I guess what's one thing, Kim, from this interaction and kind of going through it from start to finish, and now you've actually been approached in your office, I know, as somebody who's been known to have done innovation, has gotten other deals brought to them because they've heard of what you've done. What's one big takeaway that you might share with another agent, with another seller, investor that might be looking at doing innovation that might draw you to, hey, this might be a good opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm big on the more you learn, the more you earn. Just getting creative in that sense, thinking outside the box, and doing hard money loans. I was familiar with fixer uppers. I was familiar with doing the math and the ARV and what it would take for rehab. But also, what people don't notice is you're double paying for closing costs, double paying agent, things of that nature, where it's less money for the investors helping with the flip and for the seller essentially because it's going to title to attorneys to just different things.
Yeah.
What I took away innovation, it makes all parties happy. You can make more money, and it's a more simple process in the sense of not having to wait to do two closings, not being so pressed because the interest bearing and things of that nature, everything was just more smooth for really, I guess, essentially the investor and seller to team up instead of her just simply selling it to you.
Yeah.
It was like a team effort, and it goes a long way and helped a lot of people a lot, further and easier.
I'll agree. And I think the one thing I'll go back to, because a question I had in my mind when I first heard about innovations is, well, how did the seller make more money? Like you said, she was at 320. You guys were listed at 320. She was willing to take under 300. We ended up getting out the door with her at 245. How is that more money? Well, a lot of people don't realize in real estate transactions, there's other fees, there's other costs, there's title costs. You have to pay an agent. That's why they support you. They list the property for you, they market for you, they go through the inspection, they do a lot of work. So they deserve to get what they're due. Especially Kim in this one, she put in a ton of work on this. Over months and months and months of not being compensated or even coming out of pocket for a few things. I do remember her doing as our agent and kind of going the extra mile, which is another thing that drew us towards her. She was willing to do what needed to get done to get the deal closed. But the big difference there is, again, there's a lot of fees that go into a real estate transaction. It's not just you sell it for 299 and that's what you get. There's a lot of commissions that come out of that. So we, as the investors, offered to pay closing costs, commissions, everything, all the holding costs in between. We actually ended up splitting the utilities with the current seller. But that 245 that we offered her was net in her pocket at the end of the day. So she didn't have to worry about other fees and holding costs and things like that. We absorbed that as the investor because we knew we were saving on the hard money loan. So that's another big one that I'll kind of point out in there too.
Absolutely. Yep, a seller essentially they don't realize, listing their house for instance right now, 320. If she was willing to take 300,000, she's not going to get 300 net in her pocket. She's going to have to pay the closing costs, the title search, title lien, buyer agent, seller agent. Essentially, she'd get well under that could be anywhere from 8 to 9%. Essentially for closing costs coming out of the proceeds.
Yeah.
Now there she was aware she was getting a net price flat stone, and was happy with that. So just for a seller to realize, what the closing costs are going to look like and what it would look like if she was just patient and let y'all do your thing.
Yeah.
It was going to math out for her. It worked out for her. And she got to sit back and not have the stress of the home.
Exactly. And I think that's the ease of having an investor come in is the peace of mind of knowing, hey, this is off my plate. I know what number I'm going to get at the end of the day. Of course, we were bound by a legal contract at 6 months. We were going to have to pay her no matter what. So it was in our best interest to be timely and to list it at an aggressive price so that we knew we could sell it and move it. And as Kim mentioned, we actually had 3 contracts in 9 days because we got an offer. They weren't happy with a couple of things. They fell out. Another one came in, and then a third one came in, which is ultimately the VA loan that we ended up going with and closed and back the middle of last month. So, well, that's amazing. And again, I think a true testament to really the creative thought process. Not always about creative finance, creative real estate. It's always seller finance and subject to. It's really just thinking creatively of how to get the deal done. That's what drew me most to this. Is that's how I've always been with a lot of things. And I can tell that's the same way you are. Because again, the couple of months that we've known each other, that's really shined that again, you're not willing to think outside the box and get things done. rather than just only going the traditional route. And I truthfully think that that mindset of the more you earn, the more you learn, the more you earn will really pay you dividends in a couple of years as you continue to grow. Um,
Absolutely.
what I want to kind of pivot to, obviously, you've only been doing real estate for a year and a half. What were you doing prior to real estate, and kind of share a little bit of that background, and ultimately, what kind of led you to pivoting to into real estate and being a real estate agent?
Yeah. So I guess, your whole life you have to think creatively and come up with, what your future would look like, what your 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever the case may be. A lot of people are, I would say even agents, a lot of agents are just resale agents, selling someone's house, helping them buy a house. They don't look into the idea of like a fixer up or working with investors, or, they have their specific like niche, and that's fine. Whether it's working with just single family homes, working with $1 million homes. But a lot of people kind of stay away from the creative idea of the hard money and the, investing in numbers and things like that, because it's all scary and unknown, that's life for you. And, you just have to go with it and learn. My whole life, I grew up in Palm Coast, native to Palm Coast, and I was an athlete. So, you have to get creative to stand out on the field, to be able to, accomplish the same goal as everyone else, but in different ways to get that point or whatever case may be. I had to stand out on the field to go to college. I got a lacrosse scholarship, played lacrosse through college. Um, Once I graduated, came back to Palm Coast, and I actually got into like health and fitness, and I was a nutrition coach. That was scary because that's not what I studied. I went to college and was really like into, my degree is in professional communication and conflict resolution. So, and psychology. So I wanted to really be into the court system,
Okay.
but I came back, started a health and wellness business, opened a storefront at 19 years old, had that for a few years, and that's scary in its own. Selling protein shakes, that's not a living. People will bash you all day long. But after my store, I actually sold it to a downline, was able to, collect commissions on the store still, and it worked full time, the normal 9 to 5 that everyone preaches is how you live your life. I worked in the courthouse for a few years. I was a pretrial services officer, so like almost probation, but while they're going through their criminal case.
Okay.
And in the process, I had bought a home, and I bought my house in Deland, and I did a lot of research. It was a new build. I went to the building department. I got records of all the permits. I just got really into the idea more than my agent, and I was able to really accomplish a lot and get more information that she was saying she was going to get. She didn't even know I was getting it. Um, and so it kind of intrigued me, just the house hunting process and dealing with all these different departments. It's not just, oh, you buy a house. There's a lot of parties involved. Um, but from there, I just continued working at the courthouse. I really didn't, not necessarily think I could do real estate, but I just didn't want to do the route and go through the course and, not guaranteed what I was guaranteed working salary, 9 to 5. And my best friend and actually my team lead, Matthew Buckley, um, they've been my friends forever. I grew up with his girlfriend, and always was involved in the real estate end because I'd go to their events and their activities and just see what he was doing and whatnot. And they both kind of pushed the idea that I would be a good agent and I should definitely give it a try. And it was more to satisfy them, I think, when I joined real estate. I had my license for a couple months and I didn't do anything, didn't even try. But then when I did try, it really worked. And I just saw like, it's not that it's simple. It's not. I mean, it's simple in this, sense of doing the same steps, trying to get better results. But there's a lot of different steps to learn. My first cold call, just called someone, just saying that I had a buyer interested in their house. And she actually asked me to meet, had 5 houses, and she wanted me to list them. And I was like,
Crazy. That one
whoa, how do I
call.
even do that? Yeah, one phone call. So that kind of was super inspiring to get my career rolling. And then my first ever client, my first sale, was an investor. Helped him find, he was looking for a mobile home park or multiple units. We found a 5 unit all the way in Sarasota area. And that was 1.2. my first deal. So that was super exciting. See what income you can make.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just like a snowball effect. Like the idea of like almost getting addicted to real estate and the grind and learning and doing all these different deals and dealing with so many different people. And I'm very social.
Mhm.
I don't hold back. I talk
I would
to
agree.
everyone and
I would
anyone.
agree. It's good.
And so I feel like that's helped me a lot on my journey, in the sense of getting to where I am. And it's all just getting to know people, getting to learn about them in the sense, I guess, being creative of what you can do for them, how to solve, whatever they're trying to solve, and you just keep it rolling.
I love it. And a couple things I took away from that is you were, again, willing to think outside the box, willing to be creative, willing to go the extra mile, but you were willing to work and learn. You didn't know that wasn't in real estate was not in either of our career path. It wasn't in our degree that we went to school for. I went to doctorate school to become a physical therapist, and now I'm a real estate investor. It's crazy how the world turns, but you never really know what tomorrow holds. And I know you say that, and it's kind of that daunting, but it's the same thing with you. You went from being a healthcare professional, truly, that's what you were, nutrition coach, whatever you want to call it, to then doing something totally different, working in the judicial system, which was more along the lines with your degree, then pivoting
Mm-hmm.
again to something truthfully that was outside of the normal 9 to 5. Um, that's kind of what I heard, and that's that's the realization I had about a year ago too. When I lost my job in last November, that I wanted to pivot, and I realized I had worked the 9 to 5 for a long time, which really never is a 9 to 5. You start before 9, you end after 5. I'm doing
Yeah,
work from home. I'm doing notes
it's
for
true.
patients. I was managing a clinic. When and what in your life really got you to say the 9 to 5 really may not be for me and kind of led to that pivot? What was the not the breaking point, but the changing point in there for you?
Um, when I graduated college and I had my own store, and there's just a lot of naysayers. The norm is 9 to 5, not doing what I'm doing, and just pretty much just a side hustle and not a career. So I kind of went with society and got into my 9 to 5, and it was so you just used the word daunting. It was just 9 to 5, so repetitive, same thing every single day. Finish your work and you just kind of hang out, scroll on the computer, do this, do that. And you felt like you were confined in this space almost. I had an office and I was just locked in my office every single day. And it was really dawn to dusk because you leave at 6 in the morning, you get home at 6 p.m. It's not 9 to 5, like you said. And it was a matter of transparency, being in the courthouse, and I started real estate, and you have to get permission to have a second job. And I didn't do that, so it was a matter of a write up. And then it went from there. And then every time we had downtime, we were allowed to be online shopping or watching Netflix or scrolling. But when you had a second job and you're working it on their hours, it was just constant
Oh.
like pushing and pushing and pushing. And so I got to the point I was texting our team lead, and I'm like, I am being pretty much pushed out. Like, I'm scared of taking the leap and just going full time because it's not guaranteed income. This market is crazy. Everyone has preached it. Like, a big statistics of agents actually quit this
Mhm.
past year. It was just the craziest year ever for me to take the leap and join real estate.
Yeah.
But he preached without a plan B, you only have plan A. Like, you have to make it work. And so I, on a whim, put in my 2 week notice, and I didn't, plan on doing that for a while. I was only in real estate for like 7 months. So actually, it was in last July when I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I was
Wow.
working both then. So it's been really 1 year of full time.
That's crazy. In a year in 2024, the estimate, I just looked this up. I had to look this up because I heard this a lot. In 2024, it was estimated that between 49 and 74% of real estate agents did not sell a single home. That was the year you decided to jump in real estate and quit your full-time job. That's crazy to me, but I can also relate to that. You quit, I was fired. However, it was I had worked up to that 12-year career of kind of a director level. I've gotten out of patient care. And a couple things you said that made me relate to this was like, you finish your work, you're not allowed to have another job, but you're allowed to do online shopping and scroll and watch Netflix. And I see so many people sitting at their job doing that mindlessly, thinking I'm getting paid for this. Well, my mind always worked as, well, I want to figure out how I can create other revenue. I can get my 8 hour a day job done in 4 or 5 hours. What can I do to be productive in those other 3 or 4 hours? I was listening to podcasts in the car. I was listening to them at lunch. I would go for walks. But also, again, I wanted to utilize that other dead time in the day. It's not like I was underperforming, but I wanted to use that other time to benefit me and benefit my family. And that's really the thing for me that kind of kicked off and said, all this extra time that I'm spending making extra money for somebody else, but I'm locked at this level of making that amount of money, I could never, even if I worked harder, that ceiling was always still here. And for you, again, your first sale, that's incredible. We just talked about the statistics of how many real estate agents didn't even have a single sale last year. And that's not to say that there's not skilled ones out there. That's to say how
Mhm.
tough the market has been the last couple of years with interest rates rising. Everybody knows all of that. That's why I kind of leaned into creative finance and creative real estate was really, how do you figure out how to use this with the least amount of money out of my pocket and still make revenue, still sell a house, still buy a house at a discounted rate. All of those things, you add those all together to your toolbox, you can then go help somebody that may not have been able to sell their house in the open market. And a lot of times, again, I'm sure you get this and you hear this, when I reach out to real estate agents and we make a creative offer, a lot of times it's a scam. You're trying to take people out of their equity. What is your feedback as a real estate agent, as somebody who has heard and seen probably the good and the bad, and don't be afraid to share both sides?
Mhm.
What would you say to other real estate agents that maybe think that creative finance or those types of offers are a scam now that you've seen and worked with real estate investors such as myself and Robert who are actually out to serve more people?
Yeah. I think just like going through real estate courses and learning and continuing education, that's not part of the plan. So a lot of people are scared of that. You know, the not normal to them. You know, we all have our normals and that's not normal. And they feel like it's more, I guess, not a scam, but a risk.
Hmm.
And you're going to, make your client almost a subject to being victimized in this sense of kind of financing. And we do. I have, about 14 listings right now, and every single one gets those sub two offers. And a lot of people that doesn't work for them because they want to sell their house and move to the next. And yes, granted, if it's in a trust, and these are things that agents don't want to learn. They don't want to learn about the sub two process because they just don't see it being realistic. The goal is to sell and buy. They don't see where someone else holds a note and the person can still move out. And it's just about not learning. And like we've kind of preached, learn
Yeah.
to earn. Um, they're not going to earn that kind of business because they're not open to learning that kind of financing. And, you get these offers and you're like, oh, scam, next, 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 because it's either holding a note or like with the innovation, I got told a lot that that's risky and I shouldn't even entertain something as
Yeah.
such. Um, but what did I do? I went and met with y'all at a coffee shop and wanted to learn. Point blank is what I said is I have no idea what subject to is, but I'm willing to learn. Like if you guys tell me, I can make it happen. Um, and going under contract with Innovation, people thought it was crazy. Even, teammates of mine were saying that that's a big risk because, anything could happen if you guys didn't want to finish the job and she's so stuck with the house and now she has to finish it. And, there's just a lot of factors that instill fear and
Yeah.
people aren't going to do something that they're scared of.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. I think due diligence is a big part of that in any transaction. Like you said, you vetted not only the deal, but also the borrower, and I do a lot of lending, so I vet the borrower just as much as the deal. And how much faith, how much trust, how much experience do they have doing it? And truthfully, that was our first novation. But we also knew that we knew the process. We knew who to reach out to. We had already set things up. We went through a real estate attorney, went through a title company. So it was like, hey, here's this handwritten note, trust us, and we've got your back. It was still a legal transaction. And you brought up a couple of good things too that I want to touch on was somebody holding a note. In a typical real estate transaction, somebody sells, somebody buys, right? In your experience, how many people come with $500,000 worth of cash to just say, here, I'm putting this and I'm walking away and there's no notes being drawn up, or there's still a title obviously being transferred, but there's nobody holding a note. Just out of curiosity, what would be your guess?
Like you're saying for a cash purchase?
Mhm.
Um,
There's no lender involved. The person who's buying the house has $500,000 of cash that they're saying, here you go.
it's very rare for someone to have that much cash. It's normally they're selling their house to buy the next house.
Okay.
And that's where they're going to get the equity and the cash, but they don't just carry around that much cash.
Gotcha. So the reason I bring this up is for a reason. Talk about seller finance and somebody holding a note. In a traditional FHA, VA, whatever you want to call it, loan, there's still somebody holding a note. That's the bank. That's the mortgage.
Hmm.
So in this instance, with seller finance or with sub two, we're not saying anything different. And I think that's what scares a lot of people is because they don't understand that the seller is now making not only the purchase price, but also the interest that the bank would have charged, right? So say it's a 5% interest rate. They're going to make 5% interest rate amortize over that 30-year loan or whatever the terms of it is. All it means is now I don't have to go to a bank and rely on only terms that they're going to give me. Yes, it's
Hmm.
riskier, of course, but so is going to a bank and getting a loan. Somebody could still default on a loan. It's just kind of where you're okay with that risk. So there are obviously certain sellers that we would make that kind of seller finance offer and expect that to be, acceptable. Maybe it's an investor, maybe it's somebody that's owned a home for a long time, those kinds of things. There's a scenario for everything. Of course, sub two and seller finance don't work at everything. But ultimately thinking creative, lately, Robert and myself and our team have kind of thinking creatively, even using DSCR or investment loans and how we can structure those so that way we can still cash flow. Yeah, it's on a subject to or seller finance, but to us, that's still creative finance. We're still thinking outside the box of how we can get the seller what they want, how we as the investor can still help other people to move into this home and rent it out, but also make money on the back end for us too. So I really liked a couple of the things that you mentioned in there as far as the note holding, and some people don't realize just because a bank's coming in, the bank's still holding a note. So there's always still going to be a loan or a lien or a note on the property. Just when you're doing creative, a lot of times that is the seller who's holding that note in a seller finance situation or a subject to transaction. You're actually taking the original note from the seller and the bank and just letting them stay in their name, transferring the deed, but then that buyer is now taking over responsibility of paying that mortgage. So again, that's why some people think that is much riskier. There's definitely ways to protect the seller, protect the buyer, and obviously doing your due diligence to make sure that that offer works for you. That offer works for you as the buyer and the seller, and for everybody involved. So definitely some
Yeah.
good stuff that you mentioned there.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of agents don't even take the time to learn about what this sub two offer is. They just ignore it.
Yep.
And yeah, a lot of times it doesn't work, but there is possibilities of it working and no one even gives it a shot. Even as such innovations, anything of that sort. It's just the unknown is scary, really essentially, but it does work and it can be a possibility. And like you said, there's someone holding the note regardless, whether it's Wells Fargo or Trevor.
Yep, exactly right. And I think something I want to pose to you, and feel free to just pass this question if you don't want to share your thoughts on this. But we make a lot of offers, a lot of subject to seller finance offers and to agents on the market, and a lot of times we hear, "Oh, I'm sorry that doesn't work for my client," and it's a quick response, or a lot of times I don't even feel like the agent may present it to the seller. Now, if maybe they had already got an offer that was like that and they knew the seller wasn't interested. What's your experience with that? What's your thought on that? I mean, if you get an offer on one of your properties that you've listed for one of your sellers, correct me if I'm wrong, but you as the agent are kind of bound to at least present that offer to them, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is my opinion. There's no fact behind this, that
Mhm.
some of the offers we make, some of the agents, either don't understand them and are scared to present them to their seller for fact of being like, I don't know what this means. Whereas again, I'm going to lean on the fact that you came to us and to your seller and said, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out a way to make this work. And it worked for everybody in the end. Everybody got more money. Again, I go back to that example of the novation earlier. Whereas some of them, I've had experiences like this in my life of I don't know what's being asked of me. So I kind of am just like I shove it to the side rather than for the fear of looking dumb or looking inadequate of not knowing what I'm talking about. But I've learned as I've grown up is I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything, but there are other people out there that are willing to share that knowledge. And again, just like you did before, I think it's a prime example of why we got along so well and why that transaction was able to work in the long run.
Yeah, people just always have to remain a student, no matter what step, what age you are in life. You just have to remain a student and just keep learning. After decade, things change regardless. That's just the world for us. And then as far as like getting sub two offers, every time, like I said, multiple listings, you do get quite a bit of them. Let's say just on one listing that's priced low, or they, looked into the mortgage and they see an interest rate of 2, 3%. that's more likely to get an offer for a sub two. I do present them. Do I present all of them? When my seller says they don't want it, just, don't keep presenting them. That's just
Of
not what they're interested in.
course.
But I do always initiate and present the first one and say, this is the kind of offer we got. We will get offers as such. This is how it's, set up. A lot of people are scared of the idea of it.
Of course.
Um, but I do enlighten my sellers of,
Awesome.
what this kind of financing is. I've had a few
Awesome.
listings.
I wanted to lean into that because I don't think, again, and there's no fact behind mine was just an opinion. And I think I would like to think that with a lot of the agents too, is they may present that first one and say, this may be some of the offers we're getting. This is how it works. But what I would say to those other agents out there that don't know what they mean, don't be afraid to ask. Again, there's always a way to counter. There's always a way to say, hey, this may not work for my seller. You have anything else? Would you be willing to come up? A lot of times when we get an offer, it's just a flat no. It's never a counter. It's never that kind of thing. So especially if you're dealing with investors, there's always room. Our first offer isn't always our best. I'm not supposed to say that, but as we all know, you don't lead with your best offer first in sales. So
Yeah.
um, this has been absolutely fantastic. I want to end with one or maybe a couple kind of just what I call like the little lightning round. What's the
Mhm.
best advice you've ever gotten? Real estate, life, school, sports. What would you share?
Um, that's a hard one. Let me think. Best advice? Hmm, I'm not quite sure.
I'll let you
I
think on
guess
that one.
just
I'll give you another one. Um, describe a time that you would have thought that you failed, but that turned into a blessing in the long run. Maybe you didn't see it in the minute, but then maybe when you looked back 3, 6, 9 months down the road, you're like, wow, that failure was actually a blessing because it led me to XYZ.
yeah. Um, so just being in the traditional 9 to 5, come home, have your house clean, cook, go to sleep, start over, maybe do a workout in between, take care of the kids, whatever case may be. Um, I guess to be transparent about, my life and my journey, I did own a house, like I said, when I was buying into land and learned about it. And I left that house and situation going on. And that felt like a big loss because it was the first house I bought and I just gave it away and left. Um, and just having to start over. I had to live with my parents for a little bit, just figure out where my next steps were. But it also made me tend more to myself and do things for me and learn more and take the leap to get out of the normal routine and join real estate and travel a lot and do all of these things. And that was a blessing I didn't notice because my normal was broken and what I thought was my normal. And now, looking back, it's such a blessing to know all the places I traveled, all the things I've been able to do, and being able to get out of the 9 to 5 routine and just be self-employed and make my schedule every day. And don't get me wrong, we work 80, 90 hours. It's every single day. I don't get to clock out. I don't get to clock in. My phone's going off every single day. Having multiple buyers, multiple sellers, it's just part of it. But it's just a blessing because I can do whatever I want. I'm not locked in one place. I just get my car and go. I travel all of Florida now, essentially,
Yeah.
doing showings and listings and things like that. I'm all the way from Jacksonville to dang near Tampa.
And I've seen that. I agree, and I can relate to that 100%. And I love. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that. And as I've referenced a few times, I lost my job in November and was kind of like, shoot, where do I go now? Do I go back to a previous job? Do I make this full-time jump into real estate? And I kind of again, it's a similar but different life
Mm-hmm.
experience of like I knew that's not what I wanted to go back to. I wanted freedom. Everybody talks about time freedom, money freedom. I just wanted freedom to, again, not be locked in those four walls in that office, that same monotonous day after day. It wasn't what my brain was ready for. I wanted to be able to travel when I wanted. I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
take my kids to school. I wanted to be able to do all of the things. And I knew that wasn't the right fit for me right then. So making that jump, yeah, I work a lot. I work a ton. I was up at 6 this morning. Again, maybe I'm not driving to work doing 6 to 6, but I'm doing different things. But I can also stop. I can help with things around the house. I can walk with my kids. I can do an exercise or workout when I want. All of those things I think was the big thing that changed for me as well. And I definitely respect and can relate to your story there as well. So we appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing and being vulnerable with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, Kim, we will wrap this up. And I just want to ask anything that you'd like to put out there. Where can people follow you? Where can people find you if they want to list a house? If they're, looking to buy a house, obviously we recommend and we want to work with you. But how can those
Mhm.
other listeners out there find you? Is there anything else you want them to know?
Um, I guess to know I am motivated, driven, and a shark in this economy, and I'll always fight so hard for my clients, Trevor, even
Yep.
if that means trying to break into a random house
Yes. Yes. We didn't get time to that. That might have
accidentally.
to be a part two. That and your
Yeah.
flip.
Oh yeah. Okay. We're gonna come on for part two.
For
Y'all
sure.
stay tuned. But I guess find me on my Facebook is Kimberly K. Instagram is Kim's Key, and maybe Trevor could share a
Yep.
snippet of my card and my phone number.
Yep. Yep. So I will
Mhm.
put I'll put a link below for both her Facebook, her Instagram, and as well as her card as well. I can put that in the show notes too. So,
Perfect.
but thank you, Kim. This has been an honor and a pleasure, and look forward to doing many more
Yeah.
deals together and having you on here again.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you so much.